This Daf Yerushalmi Yoma, the articles edition were on Daf Mem Gimel Amrav right at the top, which in the Vilna is on Lama Gimel Amrav, the Gemara Balacha Gimel towards the bottom. Okay, B'shilach Biad Ish. You send the hands of an Ish. That's Lahachsh teaches us a Ish. Lahachsh is a Zor. Says the Kormei L'Shliach Avagav Sibi Kapora, even though it says it's a Kapora, Ksher Kasha Bazar Zor is allowed to be the one taking the Zor out of Lazozo. Et Shea Osid, that he should be designated for that. Says the Kormei Muchal Lakach, prepared for that purpose, like the Jews were prepared in Megillah Esther for the 13th day of Adar. And Et Shea Mezumon, says the Kormei Esmo, based in the Lakach, should be designated yesterday by basting for the purpose of going out taking the Zor Lazozo. Itiap Shabbos, says Korbanei, Afilu Yasoy Cholim Markibel Ktefo. Even the Soy got sick and could not walk. He carries out to Lazozo on Shabbos. Itiap Petuma, says Korbanei, Afilu Nitma Mishalech Nichna Azor Betuma Mishalcho. The designated person became tummy. He comes into the Azora in his tumah in order to take out the Soy Lazozo. Says Gemara, Lohu Asidu Mazuman. What's the machine? Asidu Mazuman seems to mean the same thing. Designated from yesterday. El Shloy Shechina Biyad Shnayim. We shouldn't send it in the hands of two people. So it's supposed to be designated for yesterday, and also only one person designated. Now, there's two possibilities here. According to simple meaning, which is the way Reb Chaim also goes, it means you shouldn't send two people out together. Just one person should be Moabit. According to the Chidushay Agrim, it means you shouldn't do a relay. The first Mishalech shouldn't give to a second Mishalech. He has to complete it on his own. Okay, Shilcha B'yad Shnayim. What if you did give it in the hands of two? So according to Reb Chaim, you gave it to two agents to begin with. According to the Grim, you gave the first one, gave it to a second one. The person who actually does the Shiluach, he becomes Tameh, and is going to become Tameh as well. So what about, in this case, for two people, who becomes Tameh? According to Reb Chaim, only one of the two. According to the Grim, the first or the second one. Let's start from here. It says HaMishalech, and the person who takes it out. V'lo HaMishalech es, and here the Grim changed the girsa to HaMishalech, which according to his girsa, which would mean that only the first one becomes Tomei, not the second one. According to the Reb Chaim, it's a little bit difficult to understand. He doesn't change the girsa. He says that but according to him, it's only the main person and not the person who's being sent. In other words, not the person who's the companion. The question is, how do you distinguish if they're both being sent out together? Who's the main one and who's the companion? So it's difficult according to Reb Chaim. It's much easier according to the Grim. The first one is the time we got him, not the second one. Okay, teaches us that if you send it in the hands of two people, only the one of them is Matam Megadim, not the other one. Okay, the first one, not the second, according to the Grim. One of the two, according to the Reb Chaim. Okay, Barach. What is the concern fled? It says he fled, but then he grabbed that and ran back. Matam Megadim in Lavash Megadim Acherim. Matam Megadim that you wear the second time around. Because the first time, for sure, that was going your matami. But now he fled. You went and got him back. Didn't have to, did you? Perhaps yes, perhaps no. But the question is, are you matami going the second time? We'll put it the second time. It's a bit difficult to call Meida. The name Moshe, I think, is better. It says that once Shimon and Tzaddik died, all of them would flee to Midbar. In Derech Halichla to Barach. So if on the way to the cliff it fled, then even though it got to the cliff on its own, it's as if you're Meshach. The Matame Meshalech Begodim. So the Meshalech is Matame Begodim. Being love Derech Licha, but if he didn't go Derech Halichla Sham, El Derech Hazara. By the way, he was Barach in the other direction. So then the first Meshalech is not Matame Begodim because he never did the Meshalech. Because whatever he did was erased. So that's how he interprets the Gemara. Barach derech halicha. without having to seize it back again. It's not Naikor made that you grab them back again. So the question is, Barach Barach. So Gemara says, Derech Halicha, if he's Barach from you and he goes on to the tzuk, so Mismetam Begadim, because he didn't miss a Shiluach. So he finished it on his own, but he didn't miss a Shiluach. Derech Chazira, if the bricho is in the other direction, so that first person, he's not Mismetam Begadim because he didn't accomplish anything. His shlichus was batel by the goat going back their direction. Okay, Shalus Rabbi Lezer. They asked Rabbi Lezer, what happened when the shliach became sick? He says, you should be so too you should be in peace. As Korman says, Klomar, ma lechem lishol. Your question is, can you send somebody else's hands? Well, you have to ask Akach. You don't have. It's not your business. You're not sending anybody, right? In other words, don't ask questions which are not necessary for you to know the answers. Now, the Reb Chaim says, I think a little bit more precise. Reb Chaim says that he said he never got sick. You should be in peace, just like he was in peace. He never got sick, and that's the Rebbe Lezer Shita says. We know also from the Bavi, Rebbe Lezer never want to answer a question which he never didn't hear from his Rebbe. So he didn't hear an answer for his Rebbe. He said he never got sick, right? So therefore, you should be in peace, like he was in peace. Okay, but then I finished asking. They asked, what about if the goat got sick? What do you do then, right? Okay, do you take him on your shoulder? You get another goat? Some of them said he also never got sick. He could carry both you and me because he was very sturdy and hardy. The chayav lo mace. What if they pushed him off and the goat didn't die when it rolled down a cliff? I'm like kachi ueve shamayim, and he said this he died. All the enemies should befall. All the enemies should befall them. What befell. Destroy Lazosa. Rebbe Lezer wanted to push them off. Mafliga means draw them away from the point. But that wasn't his idea, so much as that, as we said before, he didn't say things which he never heard. In other words, Rebbe Lezer only said over things which he heard from his Rebbe. Chamim who did not have that compunction, they said, the shliach got sick, you send it in somebody else's hands. In other words, even though normally you're not supposed to do two, like we said before, but you don't have a choice. The goat became sick, markivo al chamor. You can actually, you don't have to carry him yourself. You can put him on a donkey and have the donkey drive him out to the azazel. The chayav lameis, if you push him off and he didn't die, you go down after him and you kill him down below. The entire time that Shimon Tzaddik was alive, the goat would not get to halfway down the cliff. Actually, say before it became broken up limbs, or the limbs split apart. When Shimon Tzaddik died, it would flee to the midbar, and evidently, it didn't actually go on its own volition off a cliff. And the empty people in the midbar, they would eat it. The Gourmet says Srikin is Gazlonim, like stick rikon. But I think Anoshim Rekim is translated as ancient Srikin by Yiftach. In any event, Srikin, the Pnei Moshe says Srikin Ishmael Mashachni Bolim Midbar. The Arabs who lived in the Bedouins lived in tents in the desert. So the Kol Yamim Shimon Tzaddik, as long as Shimon Tzaddik was alive, when they made the Hagorola, the lot for Hashem would come out to the right side. When Shimon Tzaddik died, Pam Yamim, Pam Tzaddik comes to the right, sometimes left. Shimon Tzaddik, as long as Shimon Tzaddik was alive, Ner Maravi Dolik. The Western candle would, whichever was Western candle, in the menorah, some say it's middle candle, some say it's one towards the west, it would go out until it was extinguished. It would never go out on its own. Say according to the Chaim elaborates here. If the menorah was north-south, so the middle candle would be slightly inclined to the west. That was near Maravi. And according to Manor, that there was east-west. So the Maravi is the second one from the east. So it's not the most eastern one. It's the next one, which is towards the west. And it was they always, whenever they went in, they would find that candle was lit. Mishameshim Natzak. Once Shimon died, Pamid cover Pamid dog. So sometimes it was extinguished, sometimes it remained lit. Shimon Natzak was alive. The red thread they put on the soil Azazel would become white, and they knew they would achieve kapara. Mishmeshim Natzak. Once Shimon Natzak died, Pamid Malbim Pamid Madim. Sometimes it turned white, sometimes it remained red. Yamim Shatzim Natzak Kayam Son Shimon Natzak was alive. Her Oram Arocha Miskaber Voleh. The flame of the wood on the mizbeach would be powerful and continue rising. Mishur Nostim for once they put the 2 blocks of wood on the mizbeach in the morning, they didn't have to put any fuel the rest of the day. It would actually burn brightly and rise from that flame the entire day. When Shimon Tzaddik died, the strength of the remains of the wood sapped. They did not refrain from adding wood the entire day. Shimon Tzaddik was alive. There's a bracha sent into the 2 breads of Shavuos of Lechem Hapanim, the 12 breads of the weekly. Placing the breads on the shulchan. And every person, every coin who wanted would get up to a kazayis of the bread. There were those who would eat the entire kazayis and be satisfied. And there was those who eat and they would leave over because they couldn't finish it because they were so satisfied even with less than the full share. When Shimon Tzaddik died, so bracha was removed from the 2 breads for Shavuos and from Lechem Hapanim. And each person would only get it up to a pea, the size of a pea. And the people who were humble, they would refrain from taking anything. They would restrain their hands. But the people who were gluttonous, they would extend their hands to take from Lechem Hapanim. The Chaim says at the time of Shimon Tzaddik, even some of the Kohanim would be satisfied even with a pea. Like I said before, some of them would eat and be sabaz. So even the size of the pea would be around for them. And at this point, of course, the pea did nothing for them. So for the Surah Moshe Chassidayim, why bother? Especially as it wasn't enough to go around. Presumably the Gargonim would get more than a pea's worth. Because it's Surah Moshe Chassidayim, although that's not clear. Ma'aser Kohen Echad b'Tziporin is the story of the Kohen in Tziporin. Presumably he came from Tziporin, and the story took place in the Beis HaMikdash. He took his portion and his friend's portion. The Karlo ben Afun. So the Korban gives to the ben Chamtzon, like the Bavli. And Chamtzon is like a lotion of, it's interchangeable lotion of chamas, right? It's chamas that he stole. He chapped the rein. He was a chapper, and the Chaim also changes the. I think the Gemara brings out the pasuk. Gemara says, "Who should daven amar Elokai faltei miyad rasha mikaf muval v'chometz." Sorry, that save me from the rasha, from the hand of a person who's degraded and is a thief. So, but the King Ephraim says that afun in Aramaic can also mean chimtze. Chimtze is, I guess, one of the words synonyms for pea. Therefore, afun and chometz also go together. Tani, 40 years before the base was destroyed, Hayaner Ma'aravi Kaveh. The western candle would go out. So evidently went out on a regular basis. Perhaps even went out early because till then perhaps it went out. Sometimes it was lit. Sometimes now it was always extinguished. Always went out. The Lashon Shoretz Madim and the red thread on the Sosa would remain red. The girl Hashem the girl of Hashem would always come up on the left hand. The Nolin Dauso Seichel Mi Ba'erev, and they would lock the doors of the Heichel at night, and Mashkim Motzim Psuchim, and they wake up early and find them open, and it was a sign that the base mission was inviting the enemy to come destroy it. Pasach Amar Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai. Yochanan Zakkai said to the Heichal, Lama Tamavi Leinu. Why are you frightening us? We know that you're going to be destroyed. Shem says, open up Lebanon. The Lebanon is a reference to the base of Mikdash, which is Melaben, no same Shel Yisrael, bleach the sins of Am Yisrael. And then fire will consume your cedar. So the door being found open was an allusion to this Pasuk Chaya, which references the Churban. Our boyim Shona Shemesh and the Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai rebuked the doors, and evidently they started closing again. Our boyim Shona Shemesh Yisrael B'Kuna Glo. Shimon Tzag was a Kohen Gadol for 40 years, the beginning of the second base Mikdash period. Uvashana Achroin, the last year, Amalem said, Shana Zoni Mesa. This year I'm dying. The previously, when he went in, he didn't have the same vision he normally had. The brachas as well. So when he was about to die, who should he point in front of you, instead of you, after you die? So Arman said, Harein Chunyon, which in the Bible is called Chonyo. My son Chonyo is in front of you. So they went and they pointed in the Chonyo. So similar Gemara in the Bible in Menachos. The Kineba Shimon Achiv, and Shimon's brother was jealous of him. And he went and he gave him the chunya to wear instead of his proper pitei kuna, an unkli, which is a leather garment, and he's also he gave him instead of a belt, he gave him he gave him a different kind instead of the avnate. He gave him a different kind of belt, which is like a dainty kind of belt. So he said, the Korban says, Shimon Mabush. Perhaps Shimon was in charge of the clothing, and therefore didn't suspect that he was being set up here. But evidently, the Chunya was also not particularly learned, that he really should realize this. Armland, so he said to the people, see what he promised his beloved, that he's going to wear her belt. He's going to wear this leather garment and wear her belt when he goes through the avodah. That's it. He was no so Amar law and said to her, when I serve as a Kohen Gadol, I'm going to put on your leather blouse, I'm going to put on your dainty belt. Also, they checked and they did not find. They checked the matters. And in fact, he made such an error, and they not find it correct. They not find it. Actually, the Matzu also says Karmel Lechunya Shabaruch Leminei Busha Alexander Shomigzaim. He fled on account of his embarrassment from Alexandria. So they checked, and evidently they found it's not true. But by that time, Lechunya had already fled. Amru, they said, Misham Baruch Lahar Melch, he first fled to Har Melch, Sham Baruch Alexandria. From there he fled to Alexandria. Found a Bana Sham Mizbech, and then he built what's called Beis Chonyo in Egypt, and he built a Mizbech, Krolov, Esa Pasuk Hazeh, and he said concerning his new base HaMikdash in Mitzrayim, but Bayomo he had Mizbech Hashem B'toch Eretz Mitzrayim. So that's my Mizbech, and there's reference to the Tanakh. Okay, so says Gemara Musar Vort. This is This person who fled from being in charge. He never one with you who's pointed. This trick was perpetrated against him, and he fled. So from pursuing it, even though it wasn't his fault and he was in the right. So but he didn't want to get involved in that. Yet, so see how he pursued it at the end and made his own Beis Hamikdash. Mishu nichnas, somebody who goes in for the purpose of having authority and pursues it. And then he leaves Kama that if he's put into a situation where he has to go somewhere else, he's going to even distort things and do things wrong in order to be able to have that position of authority, which is what he wants to have. Tani Zudi Vei Meir. This is Ray Meir's version of the events. You know, no, it's the other way around. Shimon. They pointed to Shimon. Chunia's brother was Jazvim. And Chunia put the Niklev Chagotzatzal on Shimon. And he said, right? As we said in the first case. And then Chunia had to flee because he had been the one to set up Shimon, and they found it out. They found it out, so he had fled. So, see again, so this person is not going to the Tzorah because the Chunya never successfully managed to pull this ruse over on Shimon because it was discovered. See how he, as Carmel says, has seen he manipulated Am Yisrael to go worship at this his Avodah Zarah, right? That and this going some to the base claims of Avodah Zarah, which the Machlokas was based on Avodah Zarah or not. Mishu Nichnas somebody who went into the Torah and came out and then was pushed out. Asked Kamakama how much he's going to be willing to manipulate Am Yisrael to do Avodah Zarah just in order for him to have the authority which he craves. Okay. Halacha Daled. They were made for the person taking the story out loud. Also a ramp. Let's see if we have a picture here. We do not. We only have a picture of him taking out the story with the red thread as kind of a leash. We don't have a picture of a ramp, but they made a ramp coming out of the Beis Hamikdash. Because the Babylonians they pluck at his hair. They say to the Ishiti, Tov say, take the goat and go. Take the goat, go out. Take the goat and go out. In order that the Averos on the goat's head should not remain in the city and be waived from Am Yisrael. Yoker Yerushalayim, the precious people of Yerushalayim, the dignified people of Yerushalayim, Yakir Yerushalayim, probably should read. The Shnei says that. So they would come to him on Sukkot Rishon to the first hut on the way. Yud Sukkot Rishon on Sukkot, there were 10 Sukkot Rishon to the cliff. Tishim Ris, 90 Ris. The 90 Ris is Yud Beis Mil. It's 12, 9 divided by 12 is 7.5. So there were 7. There was the first distance, then sukkah, and then 9 more sukkahs, and then there was last distance from last sukkah to the cliff. So between each segment of the journey, which were 12 segments in all, there were 7.5 meal in each one. Shima Mechzelcho 7.5 ris for each meal, because 90 divided by 12 is 7.5. Koso b'sukkah each every sukkah. They would say, "Arei mozon, arei mayim." Here's food and here's water if you need it to refresh yourself. They would take them to sukkah. They would not leave the tchum. So each one would go 2,000 amos, but they would not go beyond that. with a meal, each meal is 2,000 amos. Chutzin achron shebehen, except from the last ones. In other words, they don't go with him out to the um, to the cliff. There's a slightly different gears in the Bible. It says, "Isa she'enu magia imon." The the point is they stand at a distance there at the sukkah. Instead of she'enu magia atzmo letzuk, which you have here, it says she'enu magia imon letzuk in the Bavli. Anyway, Elomeim rachok, they stand. That last group, they don't accompany him. They stand at a distance for us Masam, and they see what he's doing at a distance. Okay, says the Gemara. Is tani kevesh gufo. Is tani kevesh mamas. So we have a difference of opinion what this kevesh was. So let's see what we have to get up to today. This is where we have to go up to. So Pnei Moshe says, is tani kevesh gufo. Klama kamin michbash asula was like those raincoats which you have, which to cover which you can get your strimel in there, your hat in there. So they made it kind of like a double gufo, a kind of poncho, like mino. So in order to hide him, that they show you gubo, batzmo, so you're able to touch him. Litlosh sorrow to pluck his hair. Milashon kavshu pneim b'karka. It's the language of kavshu pneim b'karka to push your head to hide your face down in the ground. It was a raised platform. Like explain the Mishnah. So in Amen, it was to the to prevent them from, physically encouraging the Ish-Iti to go on its way. Okay, the I guess we can read the next line of the Gemara. Gemara says the Alexandrians, the Bible says that they weren't actually Babylonians. They were Alexandrians, but they called them Babylonians because they didn't like the Babylonians. So the seems that the Yerushalmi would agree with that, right? So it says that Alexandrian, I don't know, the Alexandrian said, "Most had told him, you're going to leave that bad stuff, the kyoko dangling among us, get that goat out to the desert as soon as possible." Okay, now we're on the next Amud, and we're up to 2 dots. Stop here for today.